All right, so it's one of those brisk days where I'm wearing a long sleeve shirt here in California, but if I call it cold, I'm gonna be dogpiled on the internet by my Canadian friends.
Good afternoon, Bill. Hope you're having a great Friday in sunny Southern California. Just want to let you know here in Canada, we're middle of spring now. 40 below, about 1.5 feet of snow. Just hoping that you're having a great weekend.
They seem to think that I don't know what the meaning of cold is.
Case closed, Bill Strand. Case closed.
I think they're overreacting, don't you? Well, let's get to this plant issue. I'm out here today because we're talking about a little plant that has given us a little bit of trouble. This wonderful thing, Tradescantia pallida. And let's go inside. I'll get a warm cup of coffee and I'll tell you the story. All right, well, I'm safely back inside where it's nice and warm. And when you have a wife that loves you, you get coffee with some chocolate foam on top. So I'm set and cozy. Now, what is this thing we're talking about? This is that little plant that's giving us so much trouble. This is Tradescantia pallida. It is a member of the Tradescantia genus that has a lot of very popular houseplants. This particular variety, you'll see this in landscaping all over the place. It's called the common name is purple sword, purple heart, purple queen, all sorts of stuff. But it's a very purple plant. It's easy to grow and it's easy to propagate. Now, we got to be very careful not to use the common names, spiderwort, wandering Jew, because the issue that we're talking about is one particular species. It's not the rest of them. So we've got to talk on the species level. So you're saying, wow, what's with the suspense? What happened? Well, one of the breeders in our community, Jonathan Hill of Ipardalis, who's been on this podcast and show often, noticed that his baby chameleons would die if they were in a cage with this particular, we'll call it Tradescantia pallida. And he was able to identify that if he separated babies, the ones without the pallida were just fine. The ones with the pallida would die. And so by elimination, he realized the one thing that caused babies to die was having pallida in the cage with them. He brought up this concern to a number of us in the community privately, but then it was confirmed by another breeder that they had run into the same situation. So Jonathan and our resident biologist, Sarah Callaher, got to researching what could be the issue. And we're still trying to figure out what exactly could be causing this. Tradescantia does have oxalates inside it, and those are crystals that make it irritating to dogs and cats to eat it because it irritates the throat going down. And it's the same stuff that pothos has. But there was no ingestion here, so the babies didn't eat it. So it had to be something else. Well, this particular species, and this is the working hypothesis. So, and I've got to be clear. When I do a warning like this, I do it when there's credible evidence that there's something to be worried about. Things come up all the time and people say, oh, well, this happened, and so don't use pothos ever again. But when you look into it, you realize this is just a logical leap. Because as human beings, we have a problem, we want a solution, and we want a solution so badly that we stop when we have a solution. And we don't think, is this a good explanation? Is there a better explanation? And in many cases, these explanations only hold water if you ignore a whole lot of other evidence around. We humans, we want an explanation, and we will give up having the right explanation as long as we have something to hold on to. So I'm very careful to not just jump the gun and present something sensationalistically. We want to challenge things. But at this point, it looks like there's a problem. The working hypothesis is, and I'm emphasizing that, we're still trying to figure out what it is. We know that there's a problem, and so it's worth sharing that with you. What is the problem? And we're still working that out. The working hypothesis is that this particular species has a defense. You see all the hairs that are on this plant, and that could be a defense against mealybugs and pests. Well, baby chameleons crawling on the leaves could activate this. And if that's the case, it wouldn't be that far of a logical leap to say the baby's bodies could not handle sustained contact with these defense hairs and whatever toxins they are releasing, whereas an adult would just, number one, possibly just brush it off. Number two, probably isn't crawling on the leaves because that's not going to support them. So this is an explanation as to why, if you've used it before, you may not have seen a problem. It's the only problem we're seeing is with the pallida species in with baby chameleons. I've actually had this species in a cage with an adult, and I've never noticed the problem. So there may not be a problem. If you have this species, this Tradescantia in with an adult, you may not be at risk. Now, that being said, my recommendation is that we don't use this plant at all unless at some point we figure out why it would be safe. Now, to be clear, I'm just talking about Tradescantia pallida. The other members of the Tradescantia genus do not appear to have this danger, at least the ones that we are working with. Tradescantia, there's a lot of Tradescantia, so maybe there's another one out there with these defensive hairs. But Zebrina, the Nanook variety, the little white Tradescantia, these do not appear to be a problem. Now, that doesn't mean that in the future we're not going to hear back that they are dangerous. It just means at this point we don't have that evidence. And this is what's entirely important about having a community and talking with each other. It's so when we do find little data points like this, we can share it and it doesn't disappear. By me presenting this on this video, presenting this on social media, it can disseminate to the community at large. And hopefully it's not forgotten. I will update my ChameleonAcademy.com website. Many of you know ChameleonAcademy.com/plants is where I gather all the information we have about plants, toxicity to chameleons. So, in conclusion, Tradescantia pallida, it's good for your landscaping. It's even good for your little propagation bottles. But with what we know at this point in time, it's not good in your chameleon cages.